The crowd roared as Muhammad Ali stepped into Madison Square Garden. This wasn't supposed to be his fight. Xavier Collins, the rising star who'd been compared to Ali since his amateur days, was scheduled to face Tommy "the Hammer" Harrison, a boxer with 47 wins, 43 by knockout, and 3 losses that many believed were fixed. But Collins had been rushed to the hospital just hours before with severe food poisoning. The circumstances were suspicious, especially since Harrison's manager had sent a gift basket to Collins's hotel room earlier that day. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the arena. "Due to an unexpected illness, Xavier Collins will not be fighting tonight." Boos erupted from the 20,000 fans who had paid good money to see the most anticipated bout of the year. However, the announcer continued, raising his voice above the growing discontent, stepping in as a last-minute replacement. The crowd fell silent. The greatest of all time, the former heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad Ali. The garden exploded. Cameras flashed like lightning. Ali hadn't fought professionally in years, but he was still Ali. The mouth, the myth, the legend. At 42 years old, he was well past his prime, but his name alone was enough to electrify the arena. Harrison paced in his corner, visibly agitated. This wasn't part of the plan. He'd studied Collins for months, knew all his tendencies, his weaknesses. Ali was an unknown quantity at this stage of his life. Older, slower, but infinitely more experienced and unpredictable. "What the hell is this?" Harrison barked at his manager, Danny Rossi, a stocky Italian-American with slicked back hair and a permanent scowl. "Relax, Tommy," Rossi whispered, glancing nervously around. "This is even better. Ali's old. He's got Parkinson's starting. He can barely move like he used to. You knock him out, you become a legend. The man who put down Muhammad Ali. But the plan, forget the plan. We adapt. You still got the special gloves?" Harrison nodded, looking down at his hands. The gloves looked identical to regulation boxing gloves, but Rossi had paid $25,000 to have them specially made with reinforced knuckles and slightly less padding. Enough to give Harrison an edge, not enough to be noticed during inspection. In the opposite corner, Ali stood calmly, his legendary confidence undiminished by age. Beside him was Angelo Dundee, his longtime trainer, looking concerned. "You sure about this, champ?" Dundee asked, wrapping Ali's hands. "You haven't trained for a fight in years." Ali smiled. "Angelo, when has Muhammad Ali ever needed to train for greatness? Besides, I've been watching this Harrison kid. All power, no finesse, no style." He leaned closer to Dundee. "And I know about the gloves." "What gloves?" "Xavier told me before they took him to the hospital. Someone saw Harrison's manager bribing the equipment inspector. They've got loaded gloves, Angelo. And I'm betting they poisoned Xavier too." Dundee's eyes widened. "We need to report this. Get the fight called off." "No," Ali said firmly. "That's exactly what they want. To walk away with the money without risking the fight. Harrison's got gambling debts up to his eyeballs. His manager's connected to the mob. This is their payday. I'm going to give them a lesson instead." "But with illegal gloves? He could seriously hurt you." Ali's eyes twinkled with that old, mischievous light. "When have I ever let someone hit me?" In the center of the ring, the referee called both fighters for instructions. Harrison couldn't look Ali in the eye, which made the former champion smile wider. "Gentlemen, I want a clean fight," the referee said, eyeing both men. "No low blows, no rabbit punches, protect yourselves at all times. Touch gloves and come out fighting." Harrison reluctantly extended his gloves. When Ali touched them, he felt the difference immediately. His smile never faltered, but his eyes narrowed slightly. The bell rang. Harrison charged forward like a bull, throwing heavy punches designed to end the fight early. Ali, despite his age, slipped and dodged with a shadow of his former grace. The crowd gasped and cheered with each successful evasion. Harrison became increasingly frustrated, his punches growing wilder. "You're swinging so hard you're gonna throw your shoulder out," Ali taunted, dancing away from another haymaker. "You couldn't hit me with a handful of rice." Harrison's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, finally connecting with Ali's ribs. The impact was clearly harder than a normal punch should be. Ali winced but kept moving. From ringside, Xavier Collins watched with concern. Against medical advice, he'd checked himself out of the hospital the moment he heard Ali was taking his place. Still pale and occasionally needing to steady himself, he studied Harrison's movements with growing alarm. Those gloves, he muttered to himself. They're loaded. The first round ended with Ali remarkably unscathed and Harrison breathing heavily, frustrated by his inability to land a decisive blow. As Ali returned to his corner, he glanced down at Xavier and gave him a wink. "I see it too, kid," he said quietly as he sat down. "Don't worry. Muhammad Ali has a plan." The second round began with Harrison adopting a new strategy. Instead of wild haymakers, he now pursued Ali methodically around the ring, cutting off escape routes and conserving energy. Ali, realizing the change in tactics, adjusted his own approach. Instead of dancing away, he began clinching, tying up Harrison's arms whenever the younger fighter got close. "Break! Break clean!" the referee called repeatedly, separating them. During one clinch, Ali whispered in Harrison's ear, "I know about the gloves, son. And the food poisoning. Your manager's gonna get you both banned for life." Harrison's eyes widened with panic. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Question is, what are you gonna do about it now? Keep cheating and maybe win dirty, or show these people what kind of man you really are?" Before Harrison could respond, the referee separated them again. But Ali had planted the seed of doubt. For the remainder of the round, Harrison's punches seemed to lack some of their previous conviction. When the bell rang, he returned to his corner looking conflicted. "What's wrong with you?" Rossi hissed, squirting water into Harrison's mouth. "You had him against the ropes twice and let him slip away." "Danny, I think he knows about the gloves," Harrison muttered, spitting into a bucket. "So what if he suspects? He can't prove anything. Just finish him before he starts running his mouth to the officials." "But what if—" "There are no what-ifs," Rossi cut him off. "You owe the Calabrese family $300,000. You think they care about sporting ethics? Either you win this fight or you'll be drinking through a straw for the rest of your very short life." Harrison swallowed hard, looking across the ring at Ali, who was calmly receiving instructions from Dundee while staring directly back at him. There was no judgment in Ali's eyes, only challenge. In the audience, tension was building. The odds makers had heavily favored Harrison before the fight, but now people were beginning to place frantic side bets on Ali, lasting the distance, or even winning. The ebbs and flows of crowd emotion followed each exchange in the ring. Round 3 began with a visibly torn Harrison. His punches were technically perfect but seemed to deliberately miss their mark by millimeters. Ali, sensing the internal struggle in his opponent, began to engage more, throwing light jabs that connected but didn't damage. "Come on, son," Ali said between exchanges. "You're better than this. I've watched your fights. You've got real talent." "Shut up," Harrison grunted, throwing a combination that Ali mostly blocked. "You want to be remembered as the man who needed loaded gloves to beat a 42-year-old has-been? That's your legacy?" Something shifted in Harrison's eyes. When they clinched again, he whispered, "They'll kill me if I lose." Ali's expression remained unchanged, but he nodded almost imperceptibly. "Then we need to be creative." From ringside, Xavier Collins watched the peculiar exchange with growing interest. Though still queasy from the poisoning, his boxer's instincts told him something unusual was happening in the ring. The rhythm of the fight had changed. It was almost as if the two fighters were communicating through their punches, developing a private language only they understood. As the round progressed, Harrison landed a thunderous right cross that sent Ali staggering back against the ropes. The crowd gasped. But Collins noticed something odd. Ali had moved into the punch rather than away from it, yet his legs buckled in an exaggerated manner. The great Muhammad Ali was putting on a show. The referee began a standing count. 1, 2, 3. Ali shook his head as if clearing cobwebs, gripping the ropes dramatically. 4, 5. Ali looked at Harrison, who stood in a neutral corner, chest heaving. 6, 7. With theatrical timing, Ali pushed himself off the ropes at the count of 8, raising his gloves to show he could continue. The crowd erupted in cheers. Harrison looked both relieved and confused. As the action resumed, Ali moved in close again and whispered something that the microphones couldn't catch. Harrison's eyes widened slightly, but he gave an almost imperceptible nod. The bell rang, ending the round. As both fighters returned to their corners, a strange sense of anticipation filled the arena. Seasoned boxing journalists at ringside exchanged puzzled glances. Something wasn't following the usual script of a boxing match, but none of them could quite put their finger on what it was. Xavier Collins, however, was beginning to understand. Despite his physical discomfort, a smile spread across his face as he realized what Ali was orchestrating. The greatest showman in boxing history was directing one final, magnificent performance and teaching a powerful lesson in the process. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as both fighters moved to the center of the ring for round 4. Ali, showing more energy than he had in previous rounds, began talking again, loud enough now for the front rows to hear. "You've got heart, kid," he said to Harrison between exchanges. "Too much heart to let someone else ruin your name." Harrison's eyes darted nervously to his corner, where Rossi was shouting instructions that were drowned out by the crowd. The younger boxer threw a combination that deliberately fell short. Ali countered with light jabs that connected but carried little power. "I've got a proposition for you," Ali said during another clinch. "One that saves your life and your soul." The referee separated them again. As they reset, Harrison's expression had changed. The conflict in his eyes was resolving into determination. Meanwhile, Xavier Collins had managed to position himself near Harrison's corner. Between rounds, he'd had a brief, intense conversation with a boxing commissioner and 2 police officers who were now stationed discreetly at the arena exits. In the ring, Ali was putting on a clinic of defensive boxing. Despite his age and diminished reflexes, decades of muscle memory allowed him to slip most of Harrison's increasingly theatrical punches. The few that landed seemed to have lost their previous impact. Harrison's manager was growing suspicious. "What the hell are you doing?" Rossi shouted from the corner. "Finish him." The younger boxer ignored him, now fully engaged in the elaborate dance Ali was choreographing. To the untrained eye, it looked like an even match between a crafty veteran and a powerful younger fighter. To the boxing purists at ringside, something extraordinary was unfolding. Midway through the round, Ali finally unleashed a combination of his own. A quick jab followed by a right cross and left hook. None of the punches carried knockout power, but Harrison played along, staggering dramatically. Ali followed up with his signature shuffle and another combination. Harrison fell against the ropes, looking genuinely surprised at the effectiveness of punches that shouldn't have hurt him. The crowd was on its feet. Angelo Dundee was shouting instructions, though a slight smile suggested he understood what was really happening. Xavier Collins watched with admiration as his idol orchestrated not just a fight, but a redemption. With 30 seconds left in the round, Ali cornered Harrison and unleashed a flurry of light punches. Harrison, playing his part perfectly, covered up and then gradually slumped to one knee. The referee began counting. 1, 2, 3. Harrison looked up at Ali, who gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. 4, 5, 6. In Harrison's corner, Rossi was screaming, his face purple with rage as he began to realize what was happening. 7, 8. Harrison took a deep breath and looked around the arena, at the fans who had paid to see a real fight, at the young boxers in the audience who idolized him, at his own reflection in the ringside cameras. 9. With a decisive movement that seemed to shrug off an invisible burden, Harrison stayed down for the 10 count. 10. "It's over," the referee declared, waving his arms. The crowd exploded in astonishment and delight. Muhammad Ali had just knocked out an undefeated heavyweight contender 30 years his junior. It was impossible, improbable, and absolutely magical. As the referee raised Ali's hand in victory, Harrison approached with genuine respect in his eyes. The 2 men embraced in the center of the ring. "Thank you," Harrison whispered. "No, thank you," Ali responded. "You made the right choice, son. Now comes the hard part." Before Harrison could ask what Ali meant, chaos erupted at ringside. Police officers were converging on Danny Rossi, who was attempting to flee. Xavier Collins was pointing at Harrison's corner, speaking intensely to a boxing commissioner, who was examining the discarded gloves with growing alarm. Harrison watched the scene unfold with a mixture of dread and relief. He turned to Ali. "I'm finished, aren't I?" "As a cheater, yes," Ali said, placing a hand on the younger man's shoulder. "But as a man who chose integrity when it mattered most, you're just getting started." The crowd's attention was now split between the celebration in the ring and the drama unfolding at ringside. Reporters were rushing toward the commotion, cameras flashing. Harrison took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. "I need to tell the truth," he said. Ali nodded approvingly. "The truth will cost you this victory and maybe more. But lies cost you everything in the end, including the man in the mirror." With newfound resolve, Harrison walked to the center of the ring and gestured for the microphone. The arena gradually fell silent as he prepared to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, "I need to make a confession." The press conference room was packed beyond capacity. Journalists from every major sports outlet jostled for position, cameras flashed continuously, and the buzz of anticipation filled the air. At the main table sat an unlikely trio, Muhammad Ali in the center, flanked by Xavier Collins and Tommy Harrison. "Let me be clear about what happened tonight," the boxing commissioner was saying, standing at a podium beside the table. "Based on Mr. Harrison's confession and the evidence we've gathered, we can confirm that there was indeed a conspiracy to commit fraud involving tampered equipment and the deliberate poisoning of Xavier Collins." Camera shutters clicked rapidly as reporters scribbled notes. "Danny Rossi has been taken into custody along with 2 associates. The investigation is ongoing, but we believe organized crime elements were involved in attempting to fix this fight." A reporter raised her hand. "What about Harrison's status? Will he be banned from boxing?" The commissioner glanced at the 3 men at the table. "That's actually why we've called this press conference. I'll let these gentlemen explain." Muhammad Ali leaned forward to the microphone and the room fell completely silent. Despite the tremors that occasionally affected his speech, his voice carried the same charisma and authority it always had. "The easy thing would be to throw this young man to the wolves," Ali began, gesturing toward Harrison. "But the right thing isn't always the easy thing. Tommy Harrison made a terrible mistake, got himself tangled up with bad people, and nearly threw away his integrity. But when the moment of truth came, when it really mattered, he chose to do what was right, knowing it would cost him." Ali paused, looking around the room. "Now, I've been around boxing a long time. I've seen fighters cheat and get away with it. I've seen good men destroyed by bad decisions. What I rarely see is a man stand up in front of the whole world and admit he was wrong." Xavier Collins spoke next, still looking pale but much improved. "I agreed to withdraw any charges against Tommy on one condition, that he work with authorities to expose the corruption in boxing that nearly ended my career tonight. He's already provided names, dates, and details that will help clean up this sport we love." The room buzzed with excitement as reporters realized the magnitude of the story unfolding. Harrison, looking simultaneously relieved and terrified, finally addressed the press. "I came into boxing as a kid from nothing, dreaming of being like my heroes." He glanced at Ali. "Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what made them heroes in the first place. Not just their victories, but their character." His voice grew stronger. "I've forfeited tonight's match and purse. I've accepted a 1-year suspension from professional boxing. And when I return, I'll do it right, fighting with integrity or not fighting at all." A reporter called out, "Harrison, will you be testifying against the Calabrese family? Aren't you worried about repercussions?" Harrison hesitated, but Ali placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "The FBI has arranged protection for Tommy while the investigation proceeds," Collins explained. "And after that," he smiled, "he'll be training with me and my team. We're going to rebuild his career the right way." The announcement caused another flurry of camera flashes and excited murmurs. Ali raised his hand for silence. "I want to finish by saying something important. Tonight could have ended very differently. It could have been another black eye for boxing, another scandal, another reason for people to lose faith in this great sport. Instead, because one young man found his courage, it's become a new beginning." He turned to Harrison with genuine respect. "Tommy, you lost a fight but found your honor. That's a trade I'd make any day." As the press conference continued, the unlikely alliance between the 3 boxers became the focus of attention. The story was quickly evolving from a scandal into a redemption narrative that transcended sport. Television crews requested exclusive interviews, publishers discussed book deals, and film producers began making calls about movie rights. 6 months later, Xavier Collins successfully defended his heavyweight title in a match that broke viewership records. Tommy Harrison was in his corner, serving as an assistant coach while completing his suspension. The fight was hailed as one of the cleanest, most technically brilliant bouts in recent history. In the aftermath of the investigation, 27 indictments were issued against officials, managers, and organized crime figures involved in fight-fixing schemes. The sport of boxing implemented new equipment inspection protocols and stronger anti-corruption measures that became known informally as the Ali rules. Muhammad Ali, whose health continued to decline, received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for his lifetime of contributions both inside and outside the ring. During the White House ceremony, he specifically mentioned that night at Madison Square Garden. Throughout my career, people called me the greatest, he said, his voice soft but his words clear. But true greatness isn't about how many fights you win. It's about standing up for what's right, especially when it's hard. It's about helping others find their own greatness, like young Tommy Harrison did that night. That's the real victory. 1 year after the infamous integrity fight, as it had become known, Tommy Harrison made his return to professional boxing. His first match back was an undercard bout before a Collins title defense. The crowd, which might once have booed the reformed fighter, gave him a standing ovation as he entered the ring. In his corner was a frail but determined Muhammad Ali, who had insisted on being there despite his doctor's concerns. As Harrison prepared to fight, Ali whispered something in his ear that was caught by the ringside microphones and would be quoted for years afterward. "Champions aren't defined by their perfection, son. They're defined by how they handle their imperfections. Now go show them who you really are." Harrison won by unanimous decision, fighting with a clean technical style that boxing purists admired. But the real victory had happened long before. In that moment when he chose integrity over victory, truth over deception, and found himself worthy of standing alongside legends. As for Xavier Collins, his career flourished in the years that followed. He successfully defended his title 7 times before retiring undefeated. He opened a boxing academy dedicated to teaching young fighters not just the technical aspects of the sport, but its ethics and responsibilities. The first name on the academy's board of honorary directors was Muhammad Ali. The second was Tommy Harrison. The story of that night, when Ali faced a cheating boxer and turned the entire match into a lesson in respect, became boxing legend, taught to every newcomer to the sport as an example of what it truly means to be a champion, inside and outside the ring.